Yeah, things happen.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to this week's edition of This Woman Can. My guest this week is Sonia Gill. Sonia is a broadcast journalist, media regulator, development practitioner, attorney at law. And more interestingly for me, she's also the first woman to be appointed Secretary General of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union in its 48-year history. I love when a woman breaks history. So, Sonia, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
I am really thrilled to be a part of this conversation. It's interesting that in the Caribbean, we do not document enough of what has happened that is groundbreaking, no matter what the demographics of the person involved, right. Whether it's the first person of color doing something, whether the first person born in one of our jurisdictions, whether it's somebody of particular gender or any other factor. We haven't got these things on record, and if we don't document them, how can we celebrate them? Because we don't remind ourselves of them.
Very much. And
I've been blessed with. Please go ahead.
Sorry, and one of the I suppose the aims of This Woman Can is really to share that journey with. It's an unconscious influencer, which I love using that term. You know, so somebody listens to this, a young woman listens to this, someone up and coming listens to this, and think, hang on a minute. You know, I've got a similar background, or I've gone that journey. That means, you know, I can do this too. So that's really where I want to go with This Woman Can. So Sonia, tell us a little bit more about your journey, because it seems very varied, from broadcast journalist to attorney. How do they all fit together?
Well, actually, I don't see it as differing directions. I see it as layering. I began actually working in the media in 1983. Wow. And, you know, the period of time scares me just to hear it aloud. 35 years ago. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. And at that time, I was someone that a chance was taken on me. And I have to thank Vic Finance, former president of the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, and a regional stalwart of the sector. And he took this neophyte, 19 years old, and said to her, I want to give you an opportunity in a very significant area. Right. Production of stories, of news and current affairs content that means something to people of the Caribbean. And I jumped in with both feet, and I never looked back. However, I was blessed enough to have the experience of entering the Barbados Community College when it was launching a brand new program in mass communication. We were the guinea pigs, that right. Small cohort of us. And it was really an interesting experience, working full time and studying, having to come into work on weekends because I'd been given one day during the week to attend classes from 9 in the morning until 6 or 7 at right. night. It was a very interesting experience, but I know it was good for me because it taught me to be courageous. It taught me to take on challenges, even though I couldn't see quite where the journey would end. And that particular experience was a platform for me. I was a valedictorian at the end of that 2-year degree, but even more importantly, it allowed me to be considered for a National Development Scholarship offered by the government of Barbados.
Right.
That scholarship then took me to the University of West Indies Mona campus in Jamaica. Okay. Another adventure.
Right.
And I left Barbados, not quite knowing how I was going to make it through. During that experience, again, I met somebody who mentored me and demonstrated through their life and through the way that they treated with their sphere of influence that all kinds of things qualify you. I matriculated into the University of the West Indies, but I was only given 2 years to complete the 3-year degree.
So how long?
2 years
Okay.
to complete the 3-year degree by my workplace. They were only able to release me.
Right. Okay.
So I had a discussion with the then director of the Caribbean Institute of Media and Communication, now the Caribbean School of Media and Communication, and said, I have 2 years to finish this degree. How do we do this? And he said, okay, well, if you're willing to put in the extra work, we will allow you to accelerate your program.
Wow.
So when everyone else was doing 5 courses a semester, I was doing 7.
Oh, wow.
And because I was on scholarship, I had no leeway to fail.
Right.
Failure just was not an option because I would have lost the scholarship. And without the scholarship, I could not have continued. Again, the challenge was good for me, and I was able to complete with a first-class honors.
Excellent.
So it taught me again, it reminded me again that the answer to your desire is already there. You just have to claim it.
Lovely.
I left and returned to Barbados, began teaching at my alma mater, the community college, and then the UWI reminded me that first-class graduates are entitled to a postgraduate scholarship. So after a year of working at home and really enjoying getting into the educational experience, but from the other side of the lecture hall,
yes,
I realized this is something I need to do. And I'll be honest, I was offered another opportunity with a very large organization based here in Barbados, and they offered me all kinds of inducements, including the opportunity to further my studies. And I said, no, I think this graduate study program is the one for me. And I left behind a lot. It was truly wrenching myself away from a number of things. Launched into that experience in Jamaica, was registered for the Masters of Philosophy, the MPhil, and then was upgraded to the PhD program. I did not complete the PhD for a number of reasons, some of them administrative. And while I was navigating those challenges and the disappointment, I was informed by my former employer here in Barbados that the job that I had expected to return to was no longer available.
Wow.
So I had
a little challenge.
I had to contend with the fear of what's my next step?
Yeah.
How will I continue to be this independent person that I prided myself on being? And it was 6 months of sending out application after application all around the Caribbean. I mean, from the Bahamas to Guyana.
Yeah.
I think I got 10 responses, and of those responses, only 2 were positive. The positive one was from right there in Jamaica.
Right.
And it was for an organization for which I had done some work, because as you know, as a graduate student, you look for every opportunity to do something that will bring in a little resources. Because even though I was lecturing full time, I was not being paid as a full-time lecturer. So the resources were they were an interesting experience, and interesting is an all-purpose word.
Yeah.
But because I had done that work, and it was policy work, it was rapporteuring on some policy events, etc., I had come to the attention of the national media regulator. And when they had a vacancy, I said, let me apply. And I moved out of that experience of not knowing how I was quite going to make it.
Yes.
Into moving into a coveted position in the area in which I had done my studies, my graduate studies, because I was the first PhD student in communication policy at the University of the West Indies.
Wow.
So I was able to put at least the experience and the formal training to the best possible use. And that was an eye-opener for me. But working with a regulator, it occurred to me, while I might have a lot of appreciation of the policy side, I didn't have a proper appreciation of the legal side.
Right. Okay.
So I challenged myself again and said, well, if you want to do this well, you need to learn about it.
Right.
Formally. So I registered as a law student, distance program with the University of London. And I proceeded to complete that 3-year degree while working full-time.
Yeah.
I mean, full-time.
Yeah.
And again, came up with an honors degree. Having achieved that, I thought, well, it makes sense to go the next step and become qualified as an attorney. And I was able to do that a year, 2 years after I had completed the law degree.
Right.
So I went, again, very interesting experience. I was attending classes all morning from 8 till noon, and then leaving the law school and going back to the office and working till 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then doing it all over again and handing in assignments and all the fun that goes along with law school. Luckily I didn't have to do that for the entire experience, but I began that way. And again, if I had stood outside of the experience and said, is this possible? My answer to myself would have been no.
Yeah.
But I realized there are things that you don't choose for yourself as experiences.
Yeah. But
once you accept the blessing that's going to come at the end of it,
yes,
you find your way through.
Excellent.
And it proved to me that there's pretty much nothing that I can't do if it is the experience that I am to have. And as Jamaicans say, what is for you can't be unfor you.
Yes. Now, you touched on two things there I would like to ask a little bit more about. You touched on courage and you touched on failure. So let me ask you, what part has either played? First start with courage. Where have you had to exude the most courage, do you think, throughout your journey?
In answering the voices in my own head.
Right. Yes.
I must say, I have had the best tribe ever. Friends and family and mentors and colleagues who have said, yes, you can do it. I am here to support you. But I'm someone who has always not sought support.
Right.
Unless absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And I rarely ever think it's necessary, because I always think I should be able to do this on my own. So I think the courage to answer your own programming that says someone who looks like you, or someone who comes from your background, or someone who doesn't have X or Y external superficial factor shouldn't be able to do it. That's where I think I have to kind of overcome. And I think the other thing you have to accept is courage is not having fear. Courage is experiencing the fear and still stepping forward and doing whatever it is that you have to do. Listen, my early career was in broadcast media. I hosted television programs, radio talk shows, did live news and current affairs outside broadcasts. I hate public speaking.
And what a role to take up then.
I hate public speaking, but it came along with the job.
Yeah.
So I would be on the inside absolute jelly.
Right.
But I recognized that I had a duty to do the best I could.
Excellent.
And therefore, if the experience meant I had to speak in public, no matter what the voices in my head would be telling us, you're going to be terrible, you're all of that, I would have to say, okay, yes, voices, I hear you, but my responsibility is to still make the effort and to be as best prepared as I can and not to run away from this experience. So, as I said, I've been placed in these experiences for my best good. Would never have chosen many of them in a million years, but they have taught me time and again, what is yours is yours. I tell people the experience I had with even entering law school as a fairly prominent legal challenge is going on even now. At the time when I entered or applied to the Norman Manley Law School as a non-UWI law graduate,
right,
I did not get automatic entry. I had to sit an exam. And that exam was famous for stumping even brilliant minds. People, did it 2 and 3 times before they were able to enter. I took the exam thinking, okay, the first time will be practice.
Right.
And then I'll take it again next year and do better. Lo and behold, I succeed on my first try. I was not prepared to enter law school, either emotionally or financially.
Yes.
And I turned up having basically scraped together every cent I had, credit cards, not paying for certain things, etc., to pay my school fees. And when I arrived, for registration, I had to take along all my various certificates and degrees. And I took along those from the Barbados Community College. And the administrator who was checking them off said, "Oh, yes, you have Barbadian nationality. Your government pays your tuition fees."
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
It was a message to me.
Yes.
Not only am I supposed to be here, I'm supposed to work real darn hard to do very, very well. And again, I responded to that, and I ended up on the dean's list at the end of my law school program.
Fabulous.
So, again, I really, honestly, when I turned up, I did not know, once I paid those tuition fees, because it was all the cash I had in hand, how I was going to do it. But, you just have to step out. You really do just have to step out. Yeah. Not foolishly, you have to be wise about these things. But you have to say, look, I cannot see the end of the journey, but this step, I am taking it. And the next one I will see, and the next one I will see. So, that's my courage story.
So Sonia, how was, and that's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story. You have a lot of courage. I can see it. So how has failure made a positive difference or positive impact in your life?
It's kept me very humble.
Right.
I could easily just sort of edit my career and say, oh, well, I've done this, I've achieved this, I've been this, whatever. Yeah. But I also am very open. One of the blessings of my life is that I got the opportunity to lecture at Carrimack for almost a decade. And I still consider it one of my homes.
Right.
And while I was there interacting with students who had all kinds of challenges, family, finances, fear, of all sorts of things, I would always say to them, if I can do it, you can.
Yeah.
My very first attempt at a degree was at the Cave Hill campus of the UWI. I did not complete it. And it was a mark of, I really beat myself up about that. But I recognized you can come to an experience like that and you can start again and you can overcome.
Right. Right.
So I don't edit it out.
Yes.
I do recognize that it's part of who I am.
Yeah.
I did the best with what I had at the time. It wasn't sufficient to do what was needed for that particular certification, experience, or whatever. But that doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me a failure.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and it reminds me that people go through highs and lows and still keep going.
Yes.
My favorite phrase right now is, when you're going through hell, keep going.
and it's a sign of a resilient mindset, which is something that's very underrated. Resilience. You know, how do you bounce back when you face some adversity? So kudos to you. So Sonia, you're very accomplished. But what would you say has been your biggest career triumph?
I think my focus has always been, I have the blessing, I have the flexibility of doing the work I want to do, right, not the work I have to do.
Right.
And therefore, I need to allow my decisions to be focused on how can I, having this privilege of choice, make those choices matter. When I chose to work with the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, I was able to work with what I think one of the most significant policy things I've ever done, which is the development of the Anglophone Caribbean's first media content standards.
Right.
The official name is the Children's Code for Programming.
Okay.
But it is a comprehensive set of standards that covers TV, radio, and cable content. And it's based on principles of harm, not taste.
Right.
And it's about protecting vulnerable audiences and about ensuring dignity of the human beings, both those who are the audiences for the content as well as those who are portrayed in the content.
Okay. And
it was a slog. There was great resistance, but it was the best experience of my life. And 10 years after it was introduced, I was no longer working with the Broadcasting Commission. I was then working with the UN. And a national partner in Jamaica said something about the Children's Code. And I said, that was my baby. I was the person who helped to foster that and bring it into being. And the response I got was, that was your work? I said, well, I contributed.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was under my control. And to know that there is something that you work on and it has been so effective that is now taken for granted.
Yes.
It is part of the landscape.
Yeah.
It is referenced by other jurisdictions in the Caribbean. It's, other international development partners use it as a model, etc. I think for me, as a discrete item, but I mean, I've done other things that have brought me a great deal of pleasure. Working with the UN was an amazing experience. Yes, the UN has its challenges and it has its problems.
Right.
But I think working with an organization that has the capacity to make such a difference to ordinary people. Again, because of my education and other factors, I do enjoy a number of privileges. So it's always important for me to think about, how do I make sure that what I do matters and improves the lives of people who don't enjoy the privileges I do.
Right.
My grandparents on both sides, very humble people, very salt of the earth people, but gave my parents both my parents, the mindset that advance, don't stay where you are,
Yeah.
push,
Yeah.
go forward,
Yeah.
no matter where. And I want to honor the drive and the dignity and the sacrifice of those people
Right.
and people like them,
Yeah.
and people who have not yet been able
Yes.
to make the advances that I've been blessed to enjoy.
Excellent, excellent. So Sonia, we talked about you obviously taking on a role that has always been male dominated, an environment I know very well myself. But in your opinion, what makes a great leader?
Oh, well, those I've been blessed to work with are people who remember their own humanity,
Yeah.
who operate from a value-based position,
Yeah.
um, whose decisions are not fueled by ego,
Yes. Yes.
but who are willing to put themselves up front as needed to ensure that there is a human face.
Right.
And I've been blessed to witness leadership from men, from women, at the community level, at the family level, at the national level, at the international level.
Right.
And I think those are some of the common principles I've seen. The people who I would follow in a heartbeat are people like the late Dame Elsie Payne, the headmistress when I attended the Queen's College,
Right.
here in Barbados. A pioneering woman in her own right, but always aware of the mantle of leadership was not about the perks and benefits.
Yes.
And the visibility and the status, but about using that power to benefit others. And her phrase always was, she's a benevolent dictator. and women like that, women like that, men like that, who are about humane application of the responsibility they have.
Yes.
And they place responsibility ahead of authority.
Yeah.
I think that's the mindset that's
Right.
important. Being self-aware without being self-conscious, and recognizing that we all make mistakes, but there are ways to both apologize
Yes.
to those who have been hurt by those, and also to take action to remedy.
Yes.
That is your responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think that's what leadership is about. And of course, the fundamentals such as competence,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and capacity, and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I think those are no-brainers and deal breakers.
Yes.
Without those,
Yes.
you
Yes.
could appreciate.
So what advice would you give women maybe embarking on the leadership journey or entering a male-dominated profession?
Well, I'll answer the latter first.
Yeah.
It's my own experience has been, I didn't even realize I was the first woman something until I became the first woman something. So I was the first woman who was the assistant resident representative of UNDP in Jamaica. I didn't know that until I was engaged in the position. But I think recognizing that gender consciousness is not limited to any gender. In other words, there's a lot of argument about how unfortunately women are not their own natural allies. But you have to accept that patriarchy is present not only in the male of the gender, but it's in the society.
Yes.
So without consideration of gender, we all exhibit behaviors which are shaped by a patriarchal context.
Yes.
So I think it's not so much about, well, for me, it's not been so much about, okay, well, I'm in a male-dominated context, so I'm going to have to be this type of person or that type of person. I think there's a recognition that mostly it's systemic. It's not personal.
Yeah, yeah.
If you are engaged with people who are open to values and to principles and to equity and to fairness and justice, you will find that in men and women, in young and old, in people of all races, of all economic groups, etc. And you have to be open to that as well. Find mentors.
Right.
I can't start to list the women who I've looked at and seen as models. I think of people like Professor Rosalie Hamilton, already qualified with a PhD in economics, and then said, well, you know, there's some questions about how society operates that I think can only be answered by a legal knowledge, and then went on and became an attorney.
Right.
Dame Elsie, as I said before, and many, many more. It would be invidious because if I leave some of the list.
Yes.
My mother, who just stepped out in faith and said, this is how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to get done. And it's sorted. I mean, at great sacrifice and you know, under challenging circumstances. But I say to the young women and the men who I've had the privilege to engage with, especially in my favorite profession, teaching.
Yeah.
It's if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Right.
Anyone can do it.
And you're touching on teaching, and you come across the woman that you set your mind to it and you achieve your goals. But what do you think holds women back sometimes from really going for their goals?
Not accepting in some cases that we are worthy of the achievement.
Yes.
I think imposter syndrome is endemic.
Yes.
Especially among women of color, because so often we're told implicitly, not expressly, people who look like you, people with your background, people who you are not somebody who fits the bill.
Mold. Yes.
And that is an obstacle in itself, because you imbibe that daily, weekly, hourly, and you have to recognize it in yourself and say, look, why am I limiting myself? Yes, there are people who on first blush are not going to see me that way, but I have to say to myself, I am worthy of whatever my heart desires.
Right.
Once I'm willing to act in integrity with that belief, which means putting in the work and also monitoring my feelings and not undermining myself.
Yes.
When, particularly at the critical junctures, you need to apply to take on a high post. Why? I don't know. Will they accept me? Yeah, they're gonna look and see that I only went to X school. I didn't go to the big school like so and so, and we self-edit and we self-censor and we get in our own way.
Yes.
But sometimes we have to say, look, if they don't recognize that I am the perfect person for that, well then they are the ones who have a problem.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make myself available.
Excellent, because I'm a big believer that your past doesn't dictate your future. Because as you said, I know for myself personally, if I'd looked at me on paper at a certain time in my life, I wouldn't have achieved the levels I have achieved, because I'm like, well, you know, that's not the mold. That's not what, you know, what normally happens for a woman of this role. You know, I was a black woman, I was a single parent, I was a societal cliche, you know, limited, you know, qualifications. But then when I came on to become the first female CEO in a foreign country, because it wasn't my home country when I started out. So, like you say, you have to look within yourself, recognize the imposters there, but actually know what you are capable of achieving.
Well, I try to affirm our worth.
Yes.
Every human being is worthy
Yes.
of what their heart desires.
Yes.
I truly believe that if a desire arises in you, then the resources to achieve that desire, once it is meant for good,
yeah,
they will appear. As I said, my own experience was I did not know how I was going to pay for law school, but I mean, I had no money for books. I just had the money for tuition.
Right.
It turned up, and I went out and bought every book after that because I said I have no excuses now. and you have to basically say, I have no option but to succeed.
Yes.
And success does not have to look for you the way it does for me. For me to succeed means that I've made the honest effort, I've put myself out there, and even though it's not recognized by external A or Y, I know I have done the very best I could, and that is a success, even to make the attempt.
Yes. Because so somebody else's success doesn't mean that it's your failure.
No, not at all.
So Sonia, looking back now, what advice would you give to your teenage self? I'm trying to picture you as a teenager. Very determined. It seemed very strong-willed.
Yes, definitely very clear on the fact that I wanted to be free to make my own choices.
Right.
And that I was willing to pay the price.
Right.
But I think as a teen, there was a lot of comparison with others, which is not helpful because you're either looking down and saying, okay, I'm better than, which is not good, or you're looking up and saying, I'm less than. And I would want to say to myself, probably be gentler with yourself. And as I said recently to a friend, you are both lovable and loved.
Right.
And I think all teens, all children need that affirmed every hour of every day. In the Caribbean, we're not demonstrative.
Yes. Yes.
We love fiercely, but we don't say it and we don't act it.
Yeah.
We behave it in the way that we ensure that every seeming need of our child is, or the children around us, is met, and we go to great lengths to do that. But to actually say, I do this not because it's a duty.
Yeah.
I do this because I care for you and I want your highest good. Yeah. I think that's something that I have taken my own lessons and said, let the children who I engage with know they are loved.
Yes.
And that they are lovable.
Excellent. So what are the 3 things you've learned about yourself during your career, Sonia?
Ooh. How obstinate I can be.
Obstinate, I like that word.
Oh, how obstinate. I come to a position. I usually don't come to positions lightly. I will, really interrogate. But once I get there, it's difficult to move me.
Right.
So I've learned that. I've learned that people are looking for you to let them know how much you value them,
Yeah.
and that part of your job with those you work with and you interact with, part of your job is to let people know how much you value them
Yes.
and what you value them for. Negative feedback alone cannot be the way you engage.
No.
So I've learned that the hard way.
Yes. Yeah.
I've had people who I really value move away from the work experience because they didn't understand how much they were valued.
Yes.
So I've learned that lesson. I think the other thing I've learned is that I still don't feel like I've got it down pat.
No.
No, I'm still questioning. I'm still looking. I'm still examining and interrogating, and I feel the need to keep going.
Right.
You think when you're 30 years younger, oh well, by the time you get to the stage, you'll be settled, and you'll know, and you'll be sure. You are never that certain.
Right.
Yes, I mean there are certain things that you are settled for you and you're very clear on, but those things are just a part of it.
Yes.
That's 10%. The other 90% you're still thinking about, you're still considering, you're still asking the questions, and I like that.
Right.
My version of hell is boredom.
No, I could probably see that.
Yeah. Not that I look for drama, as
Yes.
I tell people all the time. Let us not create crises.
Yes.
There is sufficient drama on screen and in books
Yes.
for us to enjoy. But the questioning and the acknowledgement that it's never really, a done deal.
Yes.
It's never, okay, this is it and nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll never get to that point.
Yeah.
But do I have peace? Absolutely. But the peace comes from saying, I'm doing the best that I know how.
Right.
And when I know better, I will do even better. So don't beat up on yourself.
Yeah.
When you look back and say, wow, that was not the best decision. That was not the best action or word. Yeah. But also to be forgiving. I think forgiveness, self-forgiveness is a critical part of career success.
Yeah.
Otherwise, especially for me, I will worry over that mistake I made for the next 40 years. So you have to kind of just forgive yourself, accept that you did wrong, and then do what you can to remedy and do better.
And you talked about one of the three things is letting people know that you value them. In my experience, both and what I have experienced is that when people really get caught up in what they're doing in the role, and sometimes that little bit of time to stop and say, oh, you've done a great job, or I value you, can be challenging. You don't think you're so deep in it. You don't realize that just that 30 seconds to say something positive to the individual, subordinates and stuff. How important it is. So how do you make time for that? You said how important it is. So how do you make time for that and be conscious of it?
It's a daily job.
Yeah.
It is seeking the opportunities. You have to actively, set as part of your agenda.
Yeah.
I'm not, your agenda might be, well, I'm going to get out this correspondence and I'm going to complete this draft project plan. But you also have to put on your task list, I'm going to offer some positive feedback. Right. You may not write it down.
Yes, yes.
You may not need to write it down after years of writing it down, as I've had to.
Yeah.
But you do actually have to say, part of my engagement and part of my ensuring forward movement in this sphere that I'm operating in is also giving genuine, positive feedback to people. I really appreciate that, and it's an everyday work.
Excellent. So, last couple of questions, Sonia. Where would we find you on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock?
It depends. Couple of options. I'm learning to be better to myself. So one option will be at the gym on the treadmill.
Right.
Getting in my workouts. The other way I am learning to be good to myself is to acknowledge I do not have to be busy every second.
Yes.
So probably on the back patio.
Right.
With a French press of Jamaican Blue Mountain.
Now you're talking.
Just meditating on how blessed I am.
Yeah.
And in between, I probably have a tablet with my favorite word game.
Right.
And to my side would be the latest book from Alexander McCall Smith.
Okay.
Rereading an Agatha Christie or reading a Zora Neale Hurston. Yeah.
Excellent.
That's pretty much it.
And I can see you visualizing it right now. Saturday can't come quick enough.
Well, I mean, I do recognize I used to really push hard, push to the point where my body would have to say to me, stop. And of course, the way that your body says to you stop is not necessarily the best. It means, some kind of experience with ill health.
Yes.
But I've taken those messages and started to say, not pushing, not working, not being engaged in frenetic activity doesn't mean that you're a bad person.
Yes.
You deserve your time of rest and relaxation, and you deserve your time of getting back in touch with yourself.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So, last questions. What's your definition of success?
Seeing your heart's desire come to fruition, however you have conceptualized that.
Yeah.
And knowing that your heart's desire is blessing others in some way, shape, or form. It's also acknowledging that you have enough to do precisely what you need to do.
Yeah.
And to give.
Excellent. And my definite last question, what does it mean to you to be your own hero?
I'm not sure if I've yet given myself permission.
Okay.
To think of myself that way.
Yeah.
But now that you've made that suggestion through that question, I think that's something that I need to consider. I have, as I said, so many amazing examples of people who are heroic to me.
Yeah.
Men and women that I've interacted with in different spheres, in education, in work, in spiritual life, and otherwise. and I'd be quick to put that label on them. I'm not sure if I'm not sure. I know I have not yet allowed myself to think of myself in that way.
Right.
And I probably have to spend a little time considering what barriers have I put up to that.
Yeah.
I come from, I'm originally British born, and I do take on a lot of that sort of stiff upper lip and self-deprecating approach. But I over time I've learned to lay that aside, because I am a worthy human being of my highest good.
Excellent, excellent. Or maybe you can have a contemplate that on your blue mounting on a Saturday morning. And that was my last question, Sonia. If any of our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way to do that, if at all possible?
Feel free to contact me here at the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. Our email address is info@caribroadcastunion.org. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So that's a good place to find me if people have career questions, or I'm always eager to reach out and to offer my experiences of seeming failure as well as seeming success, if they're of benefit to anybody.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you so much for that. I'll be sure to put all your contact details in the show notes. But Sonia Gill, thank you so much for your time this week.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Janice, and thank you for asking me. I'm really glad I did it.
Great, thank you.